Hey everyone, welcome to We the Trust. On this podcast, we talk about the issues that plague the lives of men, from sonship to fatherhood, fitness to finance, emotions to spiritual formation. We push the boundaries that make most men uncomfortable. My name is Mario Casada, a pastor, mindset coach, and brand strategist living in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I am joined by Eric Chang, an entrepreneur, fitness coach, and author living in Arcadia, California. Welcome to Season 2.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you listen to this. Hey guys, we're here back with another episode of We the Trust podcast. We have a very special guest. This is Eric today, and we have obviously my co-host Mario, and we have a very special guest that I'm going to introduce here today. Paul and I met actually through a mutual friend named Brian. Brian, I actually just saw him a couple weeks ago, so we grabbed some lunch while he was in town. But Paul is a multi-unit restaurant chain owner, specifically the Halal Guys. If you guys are familiar with that, I think originally based in New York, now all over. He's an advisor to franchises, and that's what I mostly know about him in terms of in the business world. Investor to startups, NFT creator. That's the most recent thing I think I learned that I'm actually in your Discord. So he's an NFT creator, a family man, Christian, a fanatic about systems, sales, entrepreneurship, and personal development. You can find him on Instagram at Paul T. Tran. I wanted to add a little note to this. Something that I really appreciate about Paul specifically is when I think about people that are in marketplace ministry or just in a place where they exist as who they are and they just do a great job of being the person that they are. Paul is one of those people that come to mind. It's just extreme authenticity. Nothing seems to try hard. And he is just who he is. And I really appreciate that about you, Paul. And I always feel challenged just looking at his stories and just seeing the way that he shares his life authentically. So welcome, Paul.
Oh, gosh. What an incredible... Do you want to follow me for every introduction that ever...
I was going to say, that was glorious.
I like this guy. Who is this guy?
Oh, man.
Well, thank you for the welcome, guys. It's so cool to be here with you guys. And Mario, it's my first time talking with you live. So, but whoever knows Eric is already immediately, automatically in good company with me. So thanks for the welcome, guys.
Yeah, being here, man. We're stoked. We're excited.
Yeah, man. So Paul, I know we've talked a little bit about like the theme of our podcast. We are a kind of like a men's based podcast. We focus on developing men into living the lives that they were meant to live and living in that full fulfillment. We talked about that last time. We had a great group call that we had about 15 or so men on, and connected on that last night. We kind of focused on 5 pillars: spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, financial. So those are kind of the 5 pillars that we like to focus on. You definitely have, I'm sure, something to say about each one, but yeah, just in your own words. I know I already gave you an intro. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Sure. And total side note, the Halal Guys, they probably last week they hit their 100th store. And it was in the little town of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So pretty excited about that.
Congratulations. That's huge. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It's a brand I've loved ever since I was able to like hop on a plane and travel to New York. So it's not just a brand that I own and operate from a business side, but it's been a nostalgic thing for me. So when I first was able to travel, I was able to travel to New York. And so that brand was just one of my first loves, I guess. So there's a lot more to the story than just a business transaction. But going back to your question, I've been in the restaurant and franchising world for about 17 years. It all started with just a reckless decision making to, I think everybody at some point had like an itch to start a restaurant. And I think it's not a big deal. It's no sweat. I've seen Gordon Ramsay do it. It's not a big deal. And that was actually during my last semester of college. I was studying marketing at Long Beach State University. And we just had this my friends and I, we just had this crazy idea to bring Cajun seafood, boiled in a pot, dumped on a table, put on a bib, eat with your hands, just like this really cool, like intimate eating experience that just wasn't too prevalent here in Southern California. Yeah, I mean, not sure how much time we have for the podcast, but we pretty much dove in with very little money. We didn't have any experience at all, and made tons of mistakes. Did every mistake that I think you could do, just shy of just closing down the store and declaring bankruptcy. But it worked out. And that was pretty much my first foray into the restaurant business. To this day, I'm still ashamed, but also kind of proud that I don't know how to cook.
That's awesome. That is a great thing to like say about someone who's a restaurateur.
Well, it just reminds me that we need each other. You can't do everything on your own. There's no such thing as like a self-made person. We all need each other. And so I just hired an incredible team of people who knew how to cook. And it makes me appreciate my wife's cooking even more, knowing how difficult it is. I'm still struggling with trying to open the ramen bag, but yeah, that pretty much led me on a path to just being obsessed with franchising. We just got a lot of franchise requests in our restaurant. And so that pretty much led me on this journey of researching how to franchise, who's the best company to help. And that's when I stumbled upon FranSmart, which is the largest franchise development company in the world. It's kind of like a franchise incubator for small brands that have 1 to 4 stores. And the goal is to invest in them, advise for them, help them build systems and infrastructure, and help sell the franchise to the right people. And they were known for growing brands like Five Guys Burgers when they only had 5 stores. It was just mom, dad, and 5 kids in 5 stores, and that's it. I was able to witness the growth from how they took a small mom and pop shop to selling the franchise to the right people, operating at a very high level, being really aggressive and intentional about the growth. And to this day, they have like 2,000 stores and do about $1 billion in sales, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to grow a bunch of other brands that eventually went public, got acquired by public companies, go international, and Halal Guys is one of my clients as well. So I kind of double dipped there, where I was consulting them on turning their tiny little food carts into the actual prototype blueprint for a scalable brand that we see today. And in working with them, I just love the story so much. I also saw that everybody's done pizza and burgers, but no one's done anything with Middle Eastern Mediterranean food from a market leadership standpoint. There was still a lot of room to grow. And again, it was back to that story of just me being just so nostalgically in love with the brand that I asked my client if I could actually buy the rights for SoCal, and they agreed. To this day, we have 8 stores, my team and I, that I've built. We did have 10 stores. We did lose 2 in the pandemic. That's also a story on its own, but yeah, we do pretty well. And that's been able to afford me, awesome opportunities to do other things. And so, as Eric mentioned, I do all sorts of things because I can't sit still. It's always a struggle trying to balance things out and make time, which is why in our notes I mentioned, I need to be violently defensive of my boundaries. It's probably my biggest struggle. And I know Eric mentioned that, I'm all about like the marketplace ministry. I struggle with that quite a bit every day. It has to be intentional. It has to be worked on every single day. It's not like something you build momentum on. So I'm happy to get into that too. Hopefully that's a good jumping off point.
Yeah, tons.
That's a great, there's a ton there, man. I want to actually just kind of like get a little bit more personal. I love hearing about your professional journey, I know you have a family, and I just want to hear a little bit more about that side of things. And, when did you get married? How did that come about? And how has that and your profession or your entrepreneur side, how have those things met? I did a little mini podcast a couple of years ago called Dadpreneur. I'm probably going to reboot it now because I want to talk to you on it. But
that's awesome.
So I just want to hear how those two worlds really collided, because those worlds don't just nicely dovetail, right? And they kind of collide, right? Because I mean, I have a family, Eric has a family. We talk about boundaries all the time and how we're terrible at it.
Growing in it.
Growing. We're being challenged and we're growing through it. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, but yeah, it does feel that way. No, I appreciate that question, and you should absolutely reboot that. I think there's a lot of dad entrepreneurs that struggle with a bunch of things, and all you see on social media is like the dads who have made it, and it looks so perfect. And so, yeah, there's probably for every one person, there's like 1,000 people who struggle with it, even them. But anyway, I am married for 7 years. I've actually been married prior to. It was someone that I was with for 5 years, and you know, when you decide to get married because it's the natural next step. I don't know if that's like the right thing to do, but it's all in retrospect now. But I married someone who ended up, you know, having an affair with one of my closest friends, and so that was pretty hurtful from it was a double whammy. But for me, the only thing I ask is like, you know, to not cheat. I feel like I could work on all sorts of other problems, but that was a non-negotiable. So when I found that out, that was just something that that's something I had to jump off of. But so I was married to someone, divorced. I was actually going to church for comfort, and I was just trying to be closer to God during this time, because I've realized that I can't depend on my job or my relationships if I don't have the right relationship with God. And so I was going to church for quite some time, and that's actually when I met my wife. She actually was just getting off of a bad divorce as well. And so we didn't jump into anything immediately, but for about a year, we just pretty much knew who we were. We just talked, and then I never thought I'd marry somebody that had kids from a previous marriage. There's always that stigma, but the kids were young, and every time I did see them, we just hit it off so easily. So it pretty much destroyed all of my preconceived notions or assumptions of what it was like to be married to someone with kids. And we eventually got married, and it's been 7 going on 8 years, and I think I got lucky because after we got married, it was time for us to discuss having our own kids. And my doctor just did a test on me, and he said, actually, you can't have kids. Like, you actually can't have kids due to some biological issues. And so I feel like it was such a blessing that I didn't even anticipate, because I was able to have a family even when I didn't have, when I couldn't even have a family. And I always like to joke around that I got a 3-for-1 deal. And I think I got luckier than most most dads, because I absolutely love sleep. I think sleep is the most important thing you do. And I actually was able to bypass life. So, but yeah.
Look, he's showing off in front of us right now, man.
Right now, in front of Eric, who's about to have a third.
Man.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh, really?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're like 2 weeks out, man.
That's so awesome. Congratulations, man.
Thanks, man. So you're gonna have even more sleep than I'm gonna have.
I'll do it for you, and maybe
I appreciate it.
Maybe I'm just masking the fact that I didn't get to. I will say that I feel like I missed out on those formative beginning years for sure. And so it is what it is, right? It's the cards that are dealt, and the blessing rejoice no matter what. So, but my kids are teens now. My oldest is in high school, freshman year, and my youngest is in 8th grade, so he's falling right behind. We have a great relationship when it comes to just being able to joke around and talk. I feel like I still struggle with making sure I'm fully spending time with them. Also, I feel like there's still some dynamics of like the divorce that are in play. And so I always worry about like the whole, you're not my dad, don't tell me what to do. I never had to deal with it before. I'm starting to feel some friction now. But, it's just praying, and just the best way to spell love is Time, right? And so trying to spend time with them and minister to them and listen for them. So anyway, I was all over the place there. Hopefully that answers your question.
That was great. I was just gonna like push in a little bit, and I wanna kind of keep circling around this duality of your life, right? Which, I don't know if you've heard this, but there's balance doesn't exist, right? Balance is a myth, right? You're either fully present here, or you're fully present there, or you're halfway present here and you're fully present nowhere, right? And so I want to hear a little bit more about like how being a father, being a husband has shifted or changed your work dynamic, or how you work, or how you present, how you do work.
I'd say that I've always, work-wise, I've always been a big fan of being able to like hack it. Like for example, like Tim Ferriss has been like pretty much my biggest driver of being able to find a way to do more with less. And before I met my wife, I was using that. I was successfully able to free up my time to pursue all sorts of other things. As you can see, I tinker with so many different things. I was able to travel a lot, and once I did get married, I realized that I was setting myself up to be able to spend more time with my family than most. I'd say I'm actually always with my family. I'm at home right now, and like my kids are near. My youngest is homeschooled, and of course my oldest is in high school. But I've always tried to find a way to just always be accessible, and I wanted to prioritize time with family. And so what I do find out I end up doing is a lot of my work actually ends up getting pushed into the evening time, where my kids are doing schoolwork. My wife is, just relaxing after a long day and just watching her Korean dramas. But during the daytime, when my kids are, they need to go to baseball practice, or they want to just spend time and I have lunch with my youngest all the time, my wife as well. So I agree with you. There's no real balance. You don't make time for it. And, what is it? If you want to make God laugh, show me your plans. I like to keep it pretty fluid. I will say though, sometimes I do lose sleep. I probably sleep maybe 4 or 5 hours, or maybe less sometimes, because there are important projects, but I never feel, I feel behind, but I never feel bad about the day I spent with my family. So I think working from home and always being visibly aware that they're there, it keeps me there. Like if it's like out of sight, out of mind for me. If I'm like in an office, I probably will struggle with like not having the compassion or being aware of what I'm doing. So working from home actually it throws off my schedule, but it's a blessing. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. I think that absolutely does. At least for me, it does. Kind of piggyback off that theme. When I think of people that don't have balance, I tend to I categorize myself, yourself. I think Mario's there. We're all three of us are there. And I also, there's a couple of themes when we first met. I think of us as very like kindred spirits. Like you kind of just get along really well off the bat. One of the things that I think I really appreciated about you was that I've been told by others that is a characteristic of mine as well, is like I'm a relatively generous person. I don't really hold on to a lot of things, and I could sense that off the bat with you. I feel like you're generous with your time, financially. I feel like you're a generous person, and you're generous with your resources. And something that I've had to learn how to balance over time is like how do you balance it almost feels like that generosity can kind of bite you in the butt sometimes, or it can. It's like and if you follow the Enneagram, it's like an Enneagram 2 thing, right? So if you go too far off there, then now you start to experience burnout, or you're giving too much. Like, what is too much, right? And how do you balance that with being generous, with your time, resources, finances, and being a father and a husband?
Yeah. I'm not saying I don't struggle with that, and I'm with you as well on that. So I'd like to point out that there's confirmation bias, right? Survivorship bias. Like, you only see what you see with you and I, and with Mario now. Um, I'm really generous with really generous people, and there's not a lot of generous people. And so when I'm hanging out with you guys, when I'm texting with you, I love our conversations, by the way. When I'm doing that, there's probably like 20 other conversations I'm not having with other people. Like, for example, I don't really watch the news, right? Because of the doom and gloom, and what is it they call it, infobesity, right?
Yeah.
Too much information. So I've cut that out. I'm actually an introvert, so I actually don't talk with a lot of people. There's just a few good people that I go deep with. And so I think that's why you probably think I'm like generous with everyone, but that's not true. I can only just do this with a few people in order to have like real meaningful sticking relationship. And it's crazy because you and we don't even know if we're real, right? We haven't even met each other. But
Yeah, we haven't met in person yet.
Yeah. By the way, Mario,
that.
you're supposed to hang out like multiple times, and we keep having scheduling conflicts. And so
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Eric's wondering if I'm actually a real person or AI is but no, what is it? Every time you say yes to like a conversation or interaction, you're saying no to other things.
Absolutely.
So I'm saying no to a lot of things. I'd say I'm not like a crazy social media influencer. I'm not all these things that people see in the limelight, but it's like, I think it's pretty honest relationships and pretty deep stuff. Yeah.
That hits, man. Because I don't know that I ever realized that. I think everything that you said really hits, at least for me. I don't realize how much I do say no to. And it's like the whole introvert thing that totally resonates. And yeah, all of that totally hit on every single point for me.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
No, you're good. Yeah, I was kind of just mumbling and making noises. But as you're talking about like, I've noticed this with high performers. I've interviewed and talked with a ton of like really high performers. I consider Eric obviously a high performer. You were definitely a high performer. And I've noticed that they have there's a very similar story with their generosity, because most, if not all, of the high performers that I've ever interviewed are hyper generous, but they're very much in the same line and in the same vein as you are. They're hyper generous with very generous people, and they're very generous in a place that they feel is advantageous either to the greater good or to develop a really good relationship with somebody, or where there's a really amazing give and take, right? So with that micro backstory, I want to kind of dovetail into something else that you kind of prompted us with. I want to talk about boundaries, because you seem to have incredible boundaries. Because you say no a lot, right? You have incredible boundaries, but how long did it take you, or what brought those clear boundary lines about, and how were you able to develop those and kind of settle in there in order to be generous as you are generous?
Oh, that's such a good question. Regarding boundaries, can't really pinpoint necessarily like at what moment I realized that. I think it's just a combination or a momentum built, but I think because I read that book, Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week, there was something he said in the book where it says you need to defend your free time the same way you defend a doctor's appointment.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, I think when people free up their time because they don't replace it with anything or they don't draw any like moats around it, they let the pressures of the daily life creep in and fill in the blanks. So if you were to defend it, like and treat it like, hey, today's my free day or today's my Sabbath, like it's not, it's like you had to make it a binary decision. It can't be like, oh, there's an exception to be made because he's a good friend, or just this little work. It's okay. It's just a little chore.
Yeah.
It has to be binary. It's like yes or no. Like, are you violating your free time or are you not? And I think that's liberating too. It kind of doesn't take the strain off of your decision making energy. There's like this study done where you only get like four good hours of optimal decision making power. And if you're busy, just keep on making decisions like this. It keeps on eroding the quality of your decisions. And so maybe that was also one article that pretty much made me realize that like this is why people, they dress boring, like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. They dress boring. They don't make any decisions. They eat eggs. They eat the same thing every single day. And they say that having that routine, having this boring routine, allows you to be violently creative in other areas. Is pretty much the binary. Does that answer your question, Mario?
Yeah, that does for me.
I think it does. I mean, I love that whole idea and I think workable theory that you decide how you decide to defend your free time is really how you kind of do everything else. You've heard that adage, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And so if you want boundaries, yet you're letting things just kind of seep in like on the periphery through your free time. We don't have any free time, right? All of our time is very expensive, right? Yeah. And because we don't get it back. We're not getting these minutes back, right?
Correct.
So every moment that we have is very expensive because it's a moment that I don't get back. So to really take that understanding deeply and say, this is binary. This is a binary decision. Is this going to move me towards my ultimate purpose? And we talk about purpose a lot. And that's probably going to be my next question is what do you feel your purpose here is? And you can take that anywhere you want to go.
I'm going to the trenches right now.
I'm going to leave it open. I'm going to just leave it open right now.
That's a trench question, dude. Love it.
I'm with you on that. I think the fact that it can be binary, it needs to be binary is going to be really helpful to help you decide whether it's a good or bad thing. There was also a really cool quote before I continue on that it said that if you spent your money the way you spent your time, like you'd be broke by now. But as far as purpose goes, I think hopefully this answer will be encouraging to those who haven't figured it out yet, because I think ultimately I haven't fully figured it out. I think it's going to be a continuous journey. So don't feel like, don't let social media or anything else make you believe that we have it all together at all times. But as far as purpose, I know the general purpose is, I feel like Eric mentioned earlier, I feel like there's impact to be made in the marketplace. I feel like, me being a believer, I believe that God is not something that you pay attention to only on Sundays at 9 a.m. in the morning. It's something that you do every single day. And it also goes back to the fact that it's not about balance. It's about integration. It's not about like doing charity work and then going to work. It's being generous in the workplace, like having God's, glory shown through your works. And so I think my purpose is to like maybe demolish that perspective that it needs to be one or the other. It can be, it needs to be, and it is integrated. And so whatever I want to do or whatever I end up doing as far as purpose is concerned, I feel like it's a success whenever I feel like whatever I'm doing is definitely God breathed, and I'm doing it to serve and encourage and uplift others. whatever that form is. I've been pigeonholed in the restaurant business for so long, and I feel like I'm known as the restaurant and franchise guy. But I that's just one vehicle. I'm not married. I'm not tied to the identity. If I feel like I could make an impact in another marketplace, as long as I get rid of the imposter syndrome and my ego, and remember that all the characters in the Bible were also unqualified as well to do wherever he wanted us to do, then when I have those things remembering it in my head, that's a good path to go. So
Dude, you just gave me goosebumps, man. I feel like I'm going through that right now what do you know me for, Paul? Right. It's like, it's hard. And for the longest time, I've built a successful career off of it being a coach. And, it's like every stereotype of being a coach I have, like, I'm a bearded, bigger Asian guy. It's like, I don't try to be muscular. Just over time,
Acting right now, he's like, I don't try to be muscular. This is natural, baby.
No, it's not at all. No, not at all. But it's like I don't actively try to get super, gain a ton of muscle, right? But these are just things that I've done over the years that now, without much effort, it's part of who I am, right? And I've been going through that as, I have the book coming out in the pre-order will be ready in May. I know I'm super excited. That was not a plug at all, by the way.
Oh, no. I'm just saying we actually still don't have a solid date on that, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we just decided we're going to do the pre-order in May. Audible should be out summer, and then the physical copy out in September. So kind of 3 little launches.
It's not a plug. It is your duty if you
absolutely
help people. Yeah. How dare you? So that's one thing I learned about sales. People scared about selling themselves, but I'm like, you would be doing people a disservice if you didn't tell people about something that could help their lives. So you need to squash that.
Thank you. There's another lesson, another gem from Paul Tran here. But yeah, so as you were kind of sharing how you kind of feel pigeonholed to this, and as you're trying to almost create this new identity into a new industry, or doing new things in the marketplace, right? Because it comes from a place of, how do I give more value? How do I give more, right? And that's totally the heart of where I'm coming from. And then there's days where I'm so discouraged. I'm like, I'm just going to be a coach. And it sounds so weird to say I'm just going to be a coach, because it's there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But as you're trying to kind of step into that, it made me think about what it kind of ties into what you were saying with the whole making boundaries binary. It's a yes and a no. And I was thinking, as you were saying that, how every yes and no, I don't know, you read James Clear, right? It's James Clear, Atomic Habits, right? He talks about habit stacking. And it's every one of those yeses or nos that you're making is actually it's like a small little habit stack. And I feel like that little habit stack is when you talk about purpose, and Mario just asked you, that's a super deep trench question, right? And I think a lot of us have the general idea of okay, this is the general direction of the calling of our lives. I mean, some people don't have that, but for those that do, we have that. But in every season, as I'm trying to wear a new hat, I'm like, man, I'm asking myself, who am I again? And what matters to me? But then I also think about how you can kind of active, you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like you were saying you can kind of actively work towards that if you actively work on your yeses and your nos, and you stack, because the purpose becomes the result of the reinforcement of the values and the habits and the yeses and the nos.
Gosh, when is your book coming out, dude?
Dude, I just summarized what you said. I just took what you said and I just formulated an equation.
It was the Eric filter.
Yeah. No, but to answer your question, I actually have not read James Clear, but everybody talks about it and shares the deepest nuggets from there. So that's why I'm familiar with it. But you explained it perfectly. I didn't think about it as far as stacks, but yes, it's that momentum you build. And gosh, your question was about whether I feel that way or
well, just I feel like that's what you were kind of saying, and it's so for me, I feel like one of the things that I try to do is, whenever I'm and it's not always the best thing, especially when you're in a tinkering phase or doing stuff, right? One thing that I'm learning the most in the season right now is I've gotten to where I'm at by just doing so much. So I'm in like a bunch of masterminds, and what they're trying to teach me right now is like, hey, in this season, you have to do less. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I like? Why would I like?
Whole life is falling apart right now when you
Like,
say less,
right?
rest,
It's like,
stop. What? I don't
yeah,
understand.
like they want you to slow down and make slower moves, right? Because like, but then I'm like, dude, that's not what made me like good at what I do. Like I have to always be working on the next thing, and but then it's like you start to habit stack the nose on things and just working a little bit slower, and eventually that's how you become a slower person, or that thinks slower, but moves when you need to.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just always like I'm the shotgun guy. Like I see an idea. Oh, let me try it. Like I tried out your VSA. I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna try it. And yeah. So I don't know. I'm trying to reiterate what you were saying.
Throw in a really, really red herring comment right now. I was watching a show with my children last week. It was a cartoon, or not a cartoon. It was an animated movie, whatever. And it's about like the first female firefighters, whatever. But this girl wants to be a firefighter, and it's like early, like women weren't allowed to be firefighters. So her dad was like, no, whatever. And one of the things he teaches her that's very life-saving is that firefighters don't run anywhere. They walk with purpose. So to your point, Eric, to your point of slowing down, it's not about slowing down. It's about momentum with purpose, right? We are building momentum with purpose, just like Paul has in everything that he's doing. And to weave that back into purpose, like the kind of grander, bigger question there. I love that Paul summarized his purpose into encouraging people, being generous, like these little things that are ideas and not specific. I'm the restaurant guy. That's my purpose in life. That's not your purpose in life. Your purpose is to encourage. Your purpose is to be generous. Your purpose is to do those intangible things that God has gifted you specifically to do. And so when we understand what that is, right, you can put me anywhere. I'm going to do those things in that situation. I'm going to represent my purpose in that situation. So I can step anywhere and still fulfill my purpose. I may fumble through actually doing whatever it is I'm doing, but in that, I'm still fulfilling the grander purpose that God's given me in my life and put on my heart to do. So that's my little side note there. But
I love it. Yeah,
just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, you're meeting me at a different stage in life, but it sounds like I had it figured out that I'm not just the restaurant guy. Eric and I, we talk about journaling. I journal every single day, at least maybe 5 journal entries a day. I have that much therapy that I need to go through, but that function in our journal about like things we wrote years before.
Yeah.
Like what I wrote this day, on this day years before. I wrote about the fact that I knew that God was telling me not to get out of the restaurant and franchise industry 5 years ago.
Wow.
I wrote about that, and I was at this museum. I was just checking out something, and then for some reason there was this big sign, and it says "New Things This Way," and I was like, I'm not really an art fanatic at all, but I don't know why I felt like I needed to take a photo of that, and I journaled about that night. And I said, are you trying to tell me that I need to uproot myself and go a different route? I fought that idea for 5 years before I ended up leaving. Leaving FranSmart to of course, have my restaurants run. To be honest, the restaurants kind of run on its own now. I'm no longer involved, so that's why I'm doing all sorts of other things. But it's kind of cool to look back that it's been something I fought for like 5 years. So yeah, not perfect. You just caught me at the right time.
Oh, we're all progressing towards where God wants us to be, right? If we're moving in the right direction. And so I'm glad we caught you now. Like, I'm glad. The reason is because when we look back and we actually see God's hand in all of that, then we're like, oh, I could have actually been here almost 5 years ago. I could have It's like, oh man, like, wow, God, like I've been like fighting you for 5 years, and I could have grown beyond that. Now I see with perspective, hindsight is 2020, right? And even in the Bible, God's like, don't look back and remember yourself, right? He's like, forget the things that you've done and look forward to Christ and what he's going to do, right? But he does tell us to remember. And what does he tell us to remember in the Bible? He tells us to look back and remember the things that God has done. So we are to look back on our life and see his scarlet thread through our life, right? And look forward to what he's about to do next, right? Yeah. So yeah. I love that you have a photo of that, and I love that you know the story, and I love that you journaled about that, and because it just helps us to remember the things that God is doing in our life actively, right?
That's probably the most important thing that my writing has allowed me to, like, I see how much God's just been there through the whole journey, whether or not I admit it, whether or not I give him the credit for it. Looking back, it's just incredible. He's been involved the whole way through.
That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know what just made me think of this, but you were, and we're going to go in a totally different direction here, but it made me think of it because you talked about the journal of the photo journal popping back up, giving you the memory. Something you said, I feel like the only way that recently keeping in touch with you, just kind of seeing the stuff that you put out. I see a lot of your family, and I think that's just like, that's something that I feel like you're very intentionally, or you put out your sons a lot. Like just on like, oh, like they're doing homework, or they did something thoughtful for you, and you kind of document it. And like, it's always really, really cool to see. It's like, it's really sweet. Like it's really sweet. And I think I look at it because I feel like I'm a life stage, maybe be like behind you, like a couple steps behind you, because your kids are old, in the sense that your kids are older, right? Like I'm in the freaking trenches. My kids are 5'3", and they're gonna 5'3" and 0 in a couple of weeks, right? And my duties are just very different. And I remember as a young father, and this is me kind of trying to scapegoat, what I would tell my wife, and this is even before my daughter came, right? And I was like, oh, like as we're getting ready for this, babe, like, hey, I want you to know, I'm going to be a really good dad once the kids are a little older. I literally said that. Like looking back on, I can't believe I said that. But that's where my head and my heart were. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not really that good with little kids. You're like an elementary school teacher, so you're an educator. You're going to be really good with them. And then when they get older, I'll like teach them about like being more responsible and being disciplined and stuff. And it's like, that's such a lie, right? And then we went fast forward, like after I had my daughter and my son. I think I shared this with you, but we actually had a high school senior or high school sophomore live with us. She was from China, and she lived with us for like, it was supposed to be for the next 2 years. So she's actually supposed to be with us up until last year, but then COVID happened, right? And so I got to experience that a little bit. And there are a couple of themes that that resonate, that made me think of you. Number one is like this theme of adoption, where it's like you kind of took on kids that were quote unquote not yours, right? They're yours now, but they were not always yours. I feel like I got a little bit of a taste of that, having her live with us for like 7 months, and dealing with all of the emotions of a teenage girl. But I see you like, and I just see your intention, and I see like one of the strongest, like even after this one, I know you shared that you're not able to have kids like naturally, right? We've always even talked even now about adoption, right? It's like even if we're done at 3, like, well, maybe we'll adopt. Can you share a little bit about that? And just because when I think of you, I always like when I see those photos, I sense, I feel, I can literally look through my phone and feel like the Father's heart when I see you post those things. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Thanks for pointing that out. There's this bumper sticker that I saw, like, these people who adopt dogs, pets, and it says, who actually rescued who, right? Like the kids actually adopted me as their dad. That's how I take it. And also in the Bible, I feel like God's adopted us. He's adopted us by choice, which is really cool. So I think that's a pretty godly thing to be a part of. So I think that's an amazing thing to consider. Gosh, I think I think it just goes back to the fact that I don't balance things. It's all integrated, right? So if I want to show people who I really am, I do need to not just share the work side. And I'm glad Mario asked me the question. I talked about, I led in with my work, right? Because that's just typical like default response. But there's also family and there's also other things. So a part of that is, yeah, if I want to show people authentically who I am, I do need to show my kids. And I think just being grateful for when I do remember to be grateful, I see all the good. So me, I'm naturally an optimistic person. And so I like to see good in people. My wife is actually the opposite, where she's a little bit more careful about people. And I think that's why we work so well together.
It's just like my wife too.
She saves me and I save her in our special way. But with my kids, whenever I see them doing something really cool, I think because I guess I'm always just really grateful that like you said, I can't have kids. I can't believe this kid is mine and he's doing something really cool. Like, I think the world needs to know that. And I think going back to Mara's question about my purpose, I just remembered that another thing I realized about me is that my purpose isn't really to be necessarily like a leader in the sense that I am always in the limelight and I'm always like, my job is to actually be a platform for others. So I actually get immense joy when I'm like showing off other people. So for example, Eric, I want to pray for people, or whenever someone does something cool or somebody just achieved a milestone, I love posting about them. And I think it's just consistent with the fact that, look, my kid just did this, like, let's give them some props or give them some credit.
Yeah.
And that goes back in the restaurant business too. I don't like to, in my partnership with my restaurants, out of my 5 partners, like I've decided to have like Thomas. I don't know if you know Thomas, but we've made him the CEO of the company. Even though we're all equal partners, I kind of like to be behind the scenes. And when I'm consulting for franchises, I think I get so much joy out of it because I get to show off mom and pops that have innovated and leaders, and I still get to benefit from it, but I still get to be behind the scenes and show them off is my goal. Yeah. So I like showing off people. So I guess that is the reason why I show off the kids, of course, along with a bunch of other things I show off. I show other people off. I don't like to be in the limelight. So hopefully that answers that question.
That's great.
It's the idea that, you are a leader and that leaders lift others, right? And that's your full focus, is just to kind of like highlight, everyone else that makes your leadership possible, basically, really, right? And I think that's the sign of not just a good leader, but a really godly leader, because why would we turn the focus on ourselves? I'm here, I get to be a part of this, but look what they did, check it out, push them and pull them into the limelight, pull them on stage and like say, hey, clap for these guys made it happen, like that's the only reason I'm standing here, whatever.
Maybe it's also like a healthy dose of imposter syndrome. And, Eric knows I struggle with this, but because I don't know how to cook, like who am I to be a leader in the restaurant business? Let me show off my incredible team instead. I'm jumping into like blockchain and NFTs, and I'm not a tech person by any stretch. So in that case, I'm actually showing, it's funny, I'm trying to promote my own project, but I find myself busy trying to promote everyone else's, like, oh my gosh, check out this creator's project. I just minted, or I just bought something from them. And like, maybe I'm not really doing a good job promoting my own project, but it gives me so much joy. And I'll tell Eric as well, like the most rewarding post I make all day is, how can I pray for you?
Yeah.
And I love that you're doing that too, because you're such a prayer warrior as well. So I don't know, it's just something about being able to redirect the light that is absolutely the purpose for me. So I do need to be better about building a brand, but I feel like what I'm doing is already building the brand the way that's authentic to me. So I shouldn't fight that too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we're kind of like winding down. Eric, do you have something specific or pressing that you wanted to push into?
I have way too many questions that I want to ask, so we can definitely wrap.
This is like a two-parter, right? Like I want to go deeper into a lot of things, but I actually just want to kind of get a good picture of what your daily habits look like. You know, we read about Tim Ferriss, we read about, you know, Steve Jobs, we read about like all these very high performers that have say my day is very boring so that I can do this incredible thing, right? What are your daily habits look like?
I'd say every morning I have this acronym that I use called pattern, spelled horribly, PATRN. It's the first thing is I always pray, and I'm trying to. I struggle with the P where with prayer. I feel called out all the time when I'm like, I need to stay away from the idea that I need to give God a laundry list and have him like Instacart it to me. I don't want to, I want to get off of that. So I'm trying to do this prayer where I'm always praising him first. And then I'm asking to pray for other people first. And then I eventually get to things that I want for myself. And then that's the P. A is affirmations. I'm always talking about things that I want to achieve in the present tense. And I usually do like 3 affirmations a day. And the T is thankfulness. There are 3 things I write that I'm grateful for every single day. And I don't just have one sentence, I actually elaborate on it, which is like, for example, I'm so grateful for my kids helping me with Adobe character. This is from last night, character animator. He showed me how to do something that I couldn't even figure out. Like even if I spent hours, that means so much that he was willing to be generous with his time. And it just reminds me of how smart he is. Like I write like in paragraph form because it helps it allows me to kind of experience the gratefulness even more. And then the R one is reading. I always try to read at least one piece of a book. By the way, Eric, thank you for the Intentional Father book. That's still on my queue, so I promise. But then when your book launches, I'm going to feel even more behind. But anyway, I always try to read like an article or a chapter of a book, so that I'm always like growing my brain. And then N is notes, because all throughout the day, there's always these inspirations or ideas that come along, and I always just pop up my journal and I jot it down, but I don't elaborate on it because I don't have the time to go through it. So notes are what allow me to go back on the notes that I took and either elaborate on it or dismiss it or give it to someone to do or to do something with it. But I need to process those notes. So that's PATRN. After that, I eat super boring. I just eat eggs and avocado. And then I wear the same clothes every day. I always wear sweats and a shirt and a jacket. I don't have any calls until, you guys are an exception, but I don't have any calls until after afternoon. I leave the mornings open to, help my wife with taking the kids to school, or I just get lost in something that, when you're creative, there's no real time frame for that, right? If you are creative, you should just let it ride. So I leave that margin open to do that. But all my calls, all my client calls and sales calls happen afterwards. But those are pretty much the general guideline. Everything else I leave it wide open and fluid for the opportunities I don't know that God's given me yet. So
love that. I mean, you touched on this a little bit. You touched on this a little bit because we haven't really stepped into this much. But you said you're a systems guy, right? And I love that you're like, yep, here's my system, PATRN. It's like, oh, this is the system for that. This is the system for that. I want to ask a question about systems in a second, but just real quickly, paper or digital notes, like paper or digital journaling, paper or digital, what do you prefer, or what do you feel is best for you?
I believe in like the least resistance as possible. So it would be digital.
Okay. Phone?
Yeah. So it's the first thing on, I know a lot of people love writing. they write beautifully, so they should. But me, I write like a doctor without the salary. So
Same here.
yeah, so it's all about the day one journal for me. My phone's always with me, so that's where I jot down notes.
Do you use that kind of like your OS too? Like, is that like everything that you mentioned with your journaling? Because I know your affirmations on there, that's for sure. So I assume your journaling and your affirmations on there, and then even your notes, are they on there as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow! So you really use one platform for everything.
Yeah. There's different categories. So all the notes are in like the incomplete category, and then there's one for, yeah. So it's categorized, but it's all just easy to just whip open and just jot right away. Yeah. If it takes 2 more steps than that, I'm not going to do it.
I'm glad you said that. I actually got like, I think an action item for me today is to consolidate, because I'm doing like all of that stuff in like 3 to 4 different places. And then it's just, I can never, like, I'll look at a journal that I had in 2018. I'm like, oh man, this is so good. I haven't seen it. But it's like, I haven't seen it because it's not accessible, like a handwritten one, and then I'll have some gems in there. Then I'll have some that's like, I have some on day one, and it's just like everything's kind of everywhere. And I could do a lot better with that.
Well, embrace the chaos, because sometimes you don't want it to be too organized either. There was this article that I read where there's this picture of like a pizza where it's sliced up in 12 slices. and there's one slice with all pepperoni, and there's one slice with all like mushrooms, and it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you need the chaos it needs to be messy. So don't worry about it. My wife is actually the same way. She writes in like 5 different journals, but it makes her highly productive, and it makes her happy because she loves the aesthetics of it. So I don't knock it. Don't knock it. It's just working for me.
Right on. Shotgun, Mario?
Do it.
I'll kick us off. Cool. So we have a practice that we like to do at the kind of to wrap up and summarize, and also just let people know kind of what you're doing. We call our core 5. It's our shotgun questions that we do, and it's based off of our 5 pillars. So we're just going to go through. I'm going to ask the first one. The first one is, how do you take care of or train your body? Do you have a physical practice?
Right now it's kind of light. I could be better, but I run every night with my dog, and it doubles as good health and just good mental health and decompress. So I could use more muscle resistance training, but I'll work on that.
Are you going for a certain distance or a certain time, or just whenever your dog gets too tired?
Dog, me, when I get tired. No, I just go distance, and then I'd usually just try to at least clear a mile, and then the rest of it, I'm just walking for a long time, as long as my mind needs to decompress.
Awesome, dude.
How do you take care of your heart?
My heart, meaning like relationships or?
Yeah, emotions, yeah.
I don't think I do anything active for the heart other than just being around my family and just trying to fight work to just be there for my family. I never regret it. So it's more like the selfish needs, because I'm obsessed with work. But yeah, it's just being around my family enough to just realize that they have needs and they struggle with things, and I know that I want to be loved too, and I want to be heard. So it's just making sure I have the compassion, but I can't do that if I'm not around them. So that's my thing.
Before I ask the next one, that was really resonated. I really enjoy working as well, and I heard someone kind of say, he said that when God put us, when God created Adam, the first thing he did was put him in the garden, and he said, get to work, take care of it. Right. And it wasn't like do other stuff. It was like, get to work. I feel like, there's kind of 2 paradigms in culture that exist today. It's like, one is like you, it's a kind of hustle culture, like work really hard. That's what you're meant to do. Otherwise you're not productive. And the other side is like extreme. Like the other side, it's like, just, you don't need to work that hard. It's all about your family. And right. It's like, we have to find that balance. How does, I know we're kind of getting off topic on the shotguns, but how do you reconcile that?
Whenever I see the hustle mentality, I have a lot of friends that are all about the hustle mentality. If it works for them, great. I don't know how they feel and what their story is and and they're probably coming from an upbringing where they feel like they needed to hustle. But for me, I think I'm like somewhere in the awkward middle, where it's not clear cut, but it's okay too. There are moments where I do need to like grind it out, but there's also moments where it's amazing what quiet and peace and again, I'm going to reference back to Seth Godin. Like if you use money as a KPI, you're going to discount the idea of you spending hours at the grocery store, appreciating every piece of fruit, bringing it home, spending hours to cook, and then the joy of being able to clean and serve people. Like that's a failure by if you use the wrong KPI. So for me, I'm just trying to, I think it's more like time. Where do you spend your time? That's your success. And family always carries the most weight. And I always think that, my pastor always says, no one ever on their deathbed ever wished they worked more. They wish they had more time with family. So I'm fortunate to have that stuff constantly pounded in my head. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. That's a great answer.
Not really reconciling, but it's on my mind.
Yeah, that's great. How do you take care of your mind? Do you have like a mindset practice or anything like that?
I think the pattern every morning helps as well. It stops me from just getting into reactive mode all the time. And I feel like it's stacking early wins. And also my running at night also helps me decompress my head too. Ever since I started getting into like blockchain and NFTs, like my time management has been like at risk. And the inputs are so insane. There's not a lot of outputs. So walking at night also helps a lot too. And conversations with God whenever I can remember, which I'm struggling with, but it's getting better every day.
Good. You kind of answered this a little bit. I think this goes into your pattern in the morning, but how do you really tend to or take care of your soul, your spirit, what the intangible part of Paul?
Yeah, I could be better. I think I do need to dive into the word a lot more. I feel like right now I'm just kind of like running at low. Like I'm always just asking God for help or giving him the laundry list. But when I do feel full in my spirit, it's when I remembered to ask God for help or to celebrate my wins with God in between meetings and in between work sessions. That's when I feel the most full. And there are devotionals in my Bible app that when I do go through them, they fill me up as well, and they keep me focused and grounded. So that's how I'm taking care of it when I'm successful.
Good. Love it. Last one, and it's the wallet one. So how do you take care of your wallet or your finances? Do you prescribe to any financial principles or yeah?
I struggle with this too. I tend to I think it's as far as wallet's concerned, I always, of course, tithe 10%. And the idea is to always save 40%. And the other 50% is spent for just being able to take care of ourselves immediately. I'm not really someone who spends a lot. And so, but as far as financial is concerned, I think I could be a little bit less aggressive on like investing in like businesses, because I feel like there's already a lot of risk already. I think my portfolio is a little bit overly aggressive, so I need to be a little more mature and more considerate of my family about that. But no, not necessarily. I think it's kind of like a hodgepodge of like different things, but the tithing must happen, and investing is always there. So I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like a hodgepodge.
Yeah, I like that answer. It's a very common one that a lot of the brothers give on the podcast. It sounds like there's it's a give, save, and then the rest is like for utility for use. How did you come up with those percent? How long have you lived in those percentages? And when did you decide that was going to change? And I actually have a comment about the investing business thing, but I'll let you answer that first.
Yeah. Well, tithing is always like, that's the Bible. God,
Sure.
that's what you owe God. The other stuff, it's funny. It's actually something we implemented on our kids. We just kind of like made it up when we started giving them an allowance, and we were like, that's a pretty good strategy to follow too. Do as I say, not as I do. But yeah, that's pretty much the guideline. Also, it goes back on just being simple as well. Just keep it simple, or else it won't be kept up, at least in our household.
Got it. Cool. Yeah. The clarifying question that I was going to make is, you said that you could probably be a little bit better about investing in like business. I'm guessing like small businesses, right?
So I have no stocks. I have no stocks, no savings, but all my money is in my restaurants, and also, of course, cryptocurrencies and blockchain. But there's nothing like, the typical portfolio allocation should be like this at your certain age and this. I don't follow that.
Yeah, in terms of asset classes, right?
Yeah. So businesses are like the riskiest things you can invest in. So the smart thing to do is to hedge it with something safer. That's something I do not do, and so I could be better about that.
I was on a call yesterday with. Do you know who Aaron Shoemaker is? He's a private equity guy. Q9 Ventures. He founded Front Point, which is like this. It was like a app. It's a tech company. But I was on a call with. It was a crypto call yesterday that I was on with him, and he was actually sharing about. So he talked about asset classes and risk, right? Yeah. And he actually put owning real estate and owning businesses into low risk. He said those are the lowest risk things you can, and he put crypto on the other side of it. And then I asked him like where he put equities and stuff like that. He was like, equities are like medium risk. And I was like, wow, you would put like owning, like investing in small businesses as like considered lower risk. And he says, yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the grand scheme of things, and the reason why he's like, because if I'm choosing to invest in a business, he knows he's like, I'm involved.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I have say in it. So if I have control and say in it, I know that it's a lower risk thing.
Yes. That goes back on compared to what, right?
Yeah.
When I said that it was high risk, it's compared to conventional wisdom. I agree. Like if you invest in your own business and you love the business like your child, like you'll do everything it takes to make sure it succeeds. And if you have like an insider advantage or those things, it's not really a risky thing, I guess. So I guess I'm battling where I don't think it's a risk, but it is to conventional wisdom. But yeah, I agree with that as well. So yeah,
cool.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us, man. Just dropping those knowledge bombs for us today, and for the guys that are listening in. It's been really like, I have a friend that just calls it like, he calls good conversations a masterclass, and it's just kind of like a fun little masterclass on being a dad, being a successful entrepreneur, and wading through the waters of that life. But thanks for joining us today, man. We are done for today. And if you guys want to follow us on Instagram, we're at We the Trust. You can follow Paul at, is it Paul T Tran on Instagram, or the Halal Guys SoCal, HALALGUYSSOCAL. That's, we got to talk about that Instagram handle.
I got the branding guy giving you feedback.
Yes.
And so this guy doesn't need any branding help from me. So if you want to connect with Paul, you can do that there. But again, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today, man. And that is We the Trust for this week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. For more content, you can find us on Instagram at We the Trust or at wethetrust.com. If you'd like to connect further with Eric, you can find him on Instagram at Coach Eric Freedom. And if you'd like to connect further with me, Mario, you can find me on Instagram at the Mario Quesada. We'll see you next time.